Welcome to The Thriving Mama, the podcast that teaches you not just how to survive, but to thrive in motherhood. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Davis. Over the years, I've seen thousands of women in my practice, and most of them are moms. I've also got my own 6 and 11-year-old kids, so I talk to moms every single day. The most common thing I hear from them all is some form of, I'm tired, I'm fatigued, I have no energy, I'm spent, or I'm struggling to sleep and stay awake during the day. Most of these moms are busy doing everything for their families and their jobs with very little left to fill their own cup, leading to many things, but most notably, no energy. And that makes life so incredibly difficult. In this episode, my friend Dr. Rajka and I will be chatting about the ways moms can start improving their energy levels, why it's important to care for and prioritize their own health, and some easy to follow tips for implementing these energy improving strategies. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Rajka Milanovic Galbraith. She is a leading functional medicine MD, an award-winning speaker, best-selling author of the new book, Energized, Feel Fantastic Forever, as well as an expert in hormone replacement therapy, longevity, and nutrigenetics. She has helped thousands of busy professional moms reclaim the energy of their youth and ditch their midlife symptoms that traditional doctors have told them are a normal part of aging so that they can live longer and stronger. Her work has earned her the respect of her peers, leading to her reputation as the go-to doctor for other doctors. She consults with patients at Simply Health Institute, the clinic she founded just outside of Chicago. I've launched this podcast to share my knowledge and experience, but I know that real change comes from action, not just information. For personalized guidance, I'm offering podcast listeners a free 20-minute Thriving Mama Glow assessment call. We'll evaluate your situation, and even if I'm not the right fit for you, I'll provide useful resources and support to help you on your journey. You'll find that link in the show notes. It's my pleasure to welcome to the show my friend, Dr. Rajka. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Stephanie?
I am so good, and I'm so excited to have you here today because, as I mentioned in the intro, almost every single mom I talk to today, whether it's a patient of mine or a friend or a mom I just encounter, in the store, everybody's tired and nobody has energy. And you're the energy queen. I love it that you've got the nickname of the Energizer Bunny. And I think that's really fitting because even when you post on Facebook or social media, your vibrant energy comes through, which I think is absolutely amazing.
Oh, thanks for that. That means so much because, it wasn't always the case. And, when I reflect back, and I think you and I were just talking about, is it's really easy to brush under the rug how unwell you do feel.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It is. I think especially moms, we tend to just, like you said, brush it under the rug or ignore it until it gets really, really bad. And then we decide we need to do something about it. But oftentimes that makes it much more difficult to address, as you and I both well know. It's not good to wait till all the symptoms are knocking on the door.
That's absolutely right. And when you do wait, you're right. It can take twice as long to get someone better. And, say one of your mamas is listening and says, oh, I've got all the energy I need. And they'll find out as we talk today is that I'm going to have them really dig deep and say, I can guarantee that every single person that's 20 and older, and probably now 20 and under, because they're not eating real well, has acclimated to a lower level of energy. And because the most common thing women tell me after they get done working is, boy, I thought I felt fantastic, but I didn't realize how good I could feel, or I finally feel fantastic. And I almost named the book Finally Fantastic because of the statement that I got over and over and over again from the people that came in for health optimization.
Right. I've heard that too over the years. It's really interesting. It's like whatever your baseline is like you get used to that and that becomes your normal and you don't know that it can be better. And it's pretty amazing when people are like, oh my gosh, I feel amazing. So let's dive into the first question. So you are obviously a mom, a doctor, an author, and like I said before, an energetic superwoman. I know that, it wasn't always this way for you. So I'd love for you to share your journey with your own health and how you got into functional medicine.
Yeah. So I had 3 dreams when I was a little girl, and I knew from the age of 5, I had a dream of becoming a doctor. I had a dream of having my own family and children. And I had a dream of just curing everyone because I thought that's what doctors do. And sadly, I was one of those people that when I reflect back all of my 20s, 30s, and into my 40s before I found functional medicine, was really at a level of fatigue that was unacceptable. And so much so it was debilitating. And this fatigue, I wish someone would have said when the first diagnosis was given, someone would have explored that root cause of what had led to that. It wasn't my underlying thyroid disorder. It was everything that led to that underlying thyroid disorder. And it felt like if that diagnosis wasn't enough, it went on to infertility and endometriosis and vision losing migraines and PMS and weight gain. And then ultimately culminated where the symptoms were so and the findings were so that I thought, I'm going to leave my 2 young children that I fought a decade to have motherless because my liver was failing. And we're sitting on this idyllic beach. We had spent 8 years abroad, and it was a celebratory trip. And the kids were screaming, "Watch me, Mama, watch me." And they're jumping in and doing cannonballs in the pool. And for reference point, we were in Sri Lanka. So to rent a villa with a pool is less than it costs to go to like a budget hotel here in the United States. But it was really such a treat. We were just living in that part of the world. And I should have been so happy. And I just felt nothing but despair. And like I said, I felt I'm going to leave these children without a mommy. I'm not going to see them grow up. And I fought blood, sweat, and tears to get to this point, from even getting through medical school when 6 weeks out almost prior to graduation, I just almost threw in the towel. I felt so bad. And that was that turning point where if I don't do something, this is going to take me out. And it was very serendipitous because I was just going to embark on my first functional medicine job. I just started training, but I didn't know it. I knew enough to be dangerous, but not enough how to apply it. And I made a commitment. And so I sought the help of a colleague who was seasoned. He walked me through the journey and we reversed the numbers. They thought it was autoimmune hepatitis, which carries a high mortality if you don't take steroids. It's up to 50% in 3 to 5 years. I've never been on steroids. Never. Obviously, I've been alive now more than a decade since that time, and I never got the diagnosis. And since then, I've gone on to help thousands. I'm like you had said earlier, don't let it get to that point. But I didn't know, and it's so easy. And I think it's almost like, so I think moms should have a check-in. And what that means is that every quarterly, like journal what you feel, like rate your energy. And if it's coming down, then seek help, because same like when we're business planning, right? We need to do a check-in. Is what we're doing working? Are we actually serving our patients? What could we do better? And you could really fall short if you don't pay attention. So if you don't pay attention, you don't pay attention to, it doesn't get noticed and it gets swept under the rug. And the question to ask is, do you have all the energy you did when you were 10 years old and you rode your bicycle from sunup to sundown in the summers and could go even then some, but we're told to go to bed eventually at some point?
Right. That's a really good point, is to do that check-in. I think moms get into the rut of like just powering through the day, and days go by and weeks and months go by, and then they forget about themselves and what's going on. So I think, that's something so easy. You can just put a little reminder on your calendar for 4 times a year if you want to do it quarterly. That's super simple.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you and I both have a favorite analogy to share with moms about being on an airplane and being directed to put on your oxygen mask first before you put on your child's. Why does this resonate with you so much?
Because it identifies every woman. It's every woman. And I think we need to almost stand up and shout and almost demand, society, do you hear me? We don't have to be everything to everyone. We need to be everything to ourselves first, and only then turn around and take care of others. And granted, not all moms get to this point, but I sit in my office, and especially if I see a mom that's younger than I am, kind of in their 40s, maybe in their 30s, and it just pulls at my heartstrings, because I've been there. I've been there with raising kids and burning the candle, and it's the sleep deprivation. It's, we're running the gamut, and, in our household, we try to split everything, but when the kids are sick, who do they go to? A lot of times it's mom. When something needs to be done, I always joke and say, whether you work or not, if you have kids in school, it's a full-time job. Just that, like, how do you keep on top of all these emails and the permission slips and what you have to buy? And it didn't seem endless sometimes.
Oh, it does. It's so funny because I feel like at the end of the school year, a lot of that stuff compounds. It's like double or triple what it was at the beginning of the year. And I'm constantly like looking after the fact and I'm like, oh no, did I send this in? Or, it's like right now it's like costumes and projects. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a lot. It's so much.
So I gave you a simple tip on like do the quarterly check-ins, but I'm going to welcome all women on the show. This is where I think we can do even better as women is when you see that woman struggling, you reach down and you pull her on up. And I certainly have had women in my life and I know you have. And at one point I had set this stage where I'm going to try to find a sandwich where I had found a mentor who was older than me. And then I reached down and there's a woman who was just starting out in functional medicine. I said, come on onto my ship and we're going to help you out. And I think if we each did this is look for a mentor and then pulled someone else up and we're more supportive, we get a lot further. And then sometimes it takes that mom hearing over and over again, take care of yourself first. It's being validated and being told and then maybe saying, hey, being very honest with your partner, saying, hey, I need to, and we have that give and take too, is like we try to divide and conquer, but my husband just looks at me and says, hey, I'm just spent. I'll say, hey, take a break, go put your feet up or whatever it is. I've got this from here on out is to give yourself that permission. But yeah, if we can all do our own check-ins, pull someone else up, we'd get a lot further.
Exactly. I agree 100%. I think like that was part of the reason. So I've got, the Thriving Mama podcast, but then the group associated with it is the Thrive Mama Tribe. And what you touched on was exactly the point that I'm trying to achieve. It's like we need a village and it needs to be a big village because we can't do this on our own. We just, we were designed as humans to be communal people. We need each other. And so I love the idea of having a mentor and you pulling somebody else up and then also having your partner, your spouse help and chip in as well, because I think that helps lighten the load for all of us. And so almost every mom I talk to has this lack of energy as one of her top concerns. Your book, Energized, Feel Fantastic Forever, dives deeply into this issue. In your opinion, what is the number one reason moms are lacking energy today?
I wish it were one.
I know. I kind of did that on purpose because everyone's like, oh, what's the top one? But because I know it's many, it's a long list. But what do you think is maybe the top one or two that seem to rise to the surface?
Yeah, a lot of it starts with nutritional deficiencies that really sets the stage. And then I'll tell you the theory. That's probably one. Number two is then as time goes on, it's all the exposure to toxins that take out our ability to make energy. And three would be just the stress response. So if we just targeted those three things, and there's as we talk about my protocol. So I'd love to share my theory on why people end up with low energy is when we're born, we acquire whatever nutritional deficiencies our parents have, whatever their microbiome is. So I would venture to guess, because functional medicine wasn't in the forefront, it's now been coming more and more so, is that there were probably some deficiencies to be had. And I'm not blaming mom or dad, but that's, in an ideal world, we would see a woman preconceptually, or you'd be treating and advising mom on how to feed the child and how to support them nutritionally. And so we start out with these vitamin and mineral deficiencies. Maybe you don't feel so bad. And then you go along in life, stressors will deplete those further. When we're exposed to toxins, they chew up our crucial B vitamins and a lot of other nutrients. And toxins also injure our ability to make energy. So they injure our mitochondria, which are not protected. The DNA of our mitochondria is not protected like the rest of our DNA. And so they're particularly prone. And then it's a vicious cycle. Toxins deplete nutrients are deplete, stress depletes it, takes out the toxins, take out the mitochondria, and it does this. And then too high of stressors will start pulling, it's a drag on all our other systems. It takes down our thyroid. And, mine was so multifaceted. I'd say nutrients, detoxification, ability, as well as that extreme stress of medical school. And, I've known there was a physician who ended up on a ventilator from the level of dysfunction and despair her body was thrown in. And, she goes on now, she coaches other women. So she's come out of that and she still works, I think, in some capacity as a doctor, but boy, that's an awful lot of stress. But that's my theory on why we get deficient. And then we have a strategy to then recover someone.
Right. No, I can relate because that was my journey. I think we talked before about how I found functional medicine, and mine was my issues manifested as like PMS and hormonal migraines and all of that category of symptoms. And that was in my early 20s. And I went to multiple doctors, got passed around the system from allergist to internist, all the people. And they're all like, well, we're going to put you on birth control and we're going to put you on this migraine medication that you're going to have to stay on for the rest of your life. And I was like, 23 years old. I'm not broken. This can't be the way. And that's how I found functional medicine. And I was great until after I had my son, who's now 11. And what I believe happened was I had the pregnancy. I probably wasn't as nutritionally sound as I should have been before. I nursed him for 2.5 years. And that's a long time and a long toll on your body. And at that moment, we were also living in Minnesota, and I apparently got Lyme. And I remember laying on the couch when he was probably like 2 years old and just crying because I'm like, if I exerted myself, I had no energy. If I did anything, like it was like I had the flu. And I was like, this is not the way I imagined motherhood. I had headaches, I had fatigue, I had nausea, brain fog, all of the things. And it comes down to the things we were talking about. It was nutrients, and it was hidden infections, and it was my genetics. I have a lot of, you've kind of touched on it, but like the methylation SNPs and the glutathione SNPs and COMT for hormones. So I had so many of those things, and it was a long road to repair it. It was a good 1.5 years before I felt pretty good again, and I had the energy. So, you bring up a lot of really good points on what the actual cause is. It really is multifactorial. It's not just one thing. And if we don't address things early on, they just compound on each other, which makes it so much harder to address. So given that, obviously, we're all looking for solutions for, our depleted energy levels. So I would love for you to share your 3D high energy protocol, and as a part B of that, the easiest ways for a busy mom to implement it.
Okay. I'm going to do it within each step. Does that sound good? I have some
that works perfect.
Great rhymes and things to think about is, so, when it comes to diet, what the audience doesn't know is that ironically, as if working 100 hours a week as a resident wasn't enough, I moonlighted at a weight loss clinic and we did everything wrong. 3 drugs, fluramine, which is off the market, phentermine, because it was so bad, and Prozac, all at once with this terrible diet. And I learned how to, sure, people lost weight. They also lost hair, and they mobilized fats, and they went into liver dysfunction. It was just like a nightmare. We no longer do that. But through that, I found out, how people should be eating and utilizing the genetics. And now I reverse engineer it. So I have we have people, I call it the task method to a healthy, abundant diet. So abundant diet 365. And the task method is simply track, add, subtract, keep. And people get hung up at one point. And I'd say the top 3 when it comes to diet to really fueling the body is, in men and women both, particularly women, is that we're not getting enough protein in. And so I would say pack in the protein, all right, or even prioritize it, but pack in the protein. Most women need at least 100 grams of protein visually. 30 grams is going to be about a palm size. So times 3, that's a minimum. So track it. Use one of the apps. There's so many out there. MyFitnessPal, Chronometer. Track and see how many grams am I at, and how do I add just a little bit? Maybe it's just, so an easy strategy, you're already making dinner. You already made those chicken breasts. Instead of half of breast, have the full breast or whatever, and so that's a simple step to do that first. 2 is most people are not eating what I call a balanced plate. And by that, I mean half a plate of veggies, that quarter of a plate up at the top, filled with your protein according to your needs. At bottom of the plate should have a little serving of good fats, maybe more veggies, maybe your low sugar fruit. Could be if you're working out or don't have weight to lose, and your complex carbs, nuts and seeds. So it's a conglomeration, and we figure out that balance for you when we reintroduce things. If you're eating in a balanced plate, then you should really be eating no more than 3 meals a day. And you shouldn't be getting hungry or having blood sugar crashes in the afternoon, or in the middle of the night for that matter. So a lot of people they'll grab whatever is there, and I get it. I've been busy. So it's okay. When you build resilience, it's okay to have, set the intention for perfection. And when you're not perfect, know that you've bred when you hit that 80-20. I don't love the 80-20. I always say I'm going to shoot for 100 because when I hit 80, I'm kind of instilling more resiliency in me so that if I don't really have great choices, I'm not eating as clean for a day or so. It's just that it's a day and it's one day in my life. So that's really what for diet is the second thing. The third thing people get wrong. I remember I have 9, but we're going to give just 3 to make it more simple.
Perfect.
The diversity in the diet, and people are not eating enough different foods on a day-to-day basis to nourish their body.
I say that all the time. Yep.
And I love it. And it's so easy. Like get a bunch of different greens. So you have your mixed greens and you add in some cilantro and some basil and some dill. And those are yummy. I love all 3. And the salad right there, you've got 4 different plant-based foods. You want to try to hit 35. Some people say even 50, but most Americans probably eat the same 10 to 15 foods week in and week out, right?
Yeah. When you do a diet diary, do you see that for people like like a 3 or 5 day, it's like the same stuff repetitively over and over again. And that gets you into places where you don't want to be.
Yeah. It lowers something in our body. We're going to give you the fancy term and then we're going to simplify it. So fancy term, it lowers short chain fatty acids. Let's explain what that means. Our bacteria feed on food that presents itself. So it feeds on the food and it releases byproducts. That byproduct is fuel for us as humans. And the proper name is short chain fatty acids. You can remember that as bacterial poop. That's our fuel, right? Okay, so it gives off byproducts. If you don't have enough of those, it can cause you to have an immune system that does not function properly. It can cause you to develop more food sensitivity. So you eat the same 5 foods, and then all of a sudden you go somewhere and you introduce something new. Well, your body's not used to that, and you don't have the tolerance because you didn't have the diversity to begin with. And then lastly, it really does help us make our brain chemicals, our neurotransmitters, and for serotonin. So you want to feel better, rotate your foods. And on top of it, you're going to give your body all the vitamins and minerals you need to start making serotonin even better. And that first D is diet and nutrients. And by nutrients, I'm like, you need the core 4 or 5. Get a nutrient panel. I measure. We are up to, I was 3 to 5 vitamins and minerals are deficient in all adults. I was back over a decade ago. It's at least 5 to 7. And the younger they are, the worse it is. My 20 somethings, it can be 10 to 15 vitamin and mineral true deficiencies. And today we're even seeing, I don't know if you've seen vitamin C. It's like modern day scurvy.
Yep, it is. Almost every single panel I run, I see low vitamin C.
Yeah, I mean, where is this coming from? Eat your citrus, vegetable, your fruits, and just to diversify. And so those are simple strategies. So measure those nutrients. You pack in the protein. You eat a balanced plate for balanced blood sugars, and then you fill up with fiber. So having more diversity in those plant-based items, so different kinds.
So you had briefly touched on something earlier that I want to bring up because I see it a lot in my practice and I want to get your take on it. But you had mentioned low blood sugar at night. That is a huge problem. So I would love to hear from you on how you think that's impacting energy levels, throughout the day and your ability to get a good night's sleep.
So to me, that already is telling me that person is not eating a balanced plate, that person is acclimated to relying on carbohydrates for fuel or they didn't eat a balanced plate before dinner. So whatever you eat at dinner is going to affect what happens overnight. So your body, if you eat a bunch of carbs at dinner, your body's going to say, oh my gosh, we need more insulin. It's going to shoot out more insulin. It's going to drop that sugar. And then when it drops in the middle of the night, it can be one of the causes of middle of the night awakening. And what I oftentimes see is not only that, but then the mid-afternoon crashes. So it could be adrenal too. So you got to be careful, or they can go hand in hand, right?
I feel like they go hand in hand quite often, right?
Yeah. Who's in stress, right? So the adrenal glands make our cortisol. And when the cortisol is too high at night, it'll cause you to wake up. So
I feel like that's a big issue that I've seen that in practice for forever. That's not something new, but I feel like it's getting worse. More and more people I see, when you run their nutrients, and you look at their blood sugar and you run, the hormone panels with the cortisol. It's astounding how many people are affected by this now. And then trying to get that part reversed it can be a challenge sometimes because, like you mentioned, they are just craving those carbs, and that drive to have those carbs is so strong. So that one sometimes can be tough for especially moms, like you said, busy moms on the go, grab stuff a lot of times. So that can be a tough one to overcome. But like you said, protein. That's one of my big ones. I'm like, just eat some protein. First step, eat some protein.
I get more.
Right? Yes. More of it. Much, much more of it. Cause you were right before. I mean, so many women are, underfed from the nutrient standpoint for protein. Absolutely. So let me ask you this one. What advice would you give your younger self when she was a mom of young children trying to balance life and maintain her energy and vitality? What would you tell her now that you have so much sage wisdom?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have been building in more breaks for mama time, absolutely more time, just more downtime to really do and to do nothing and just be. And that could be as simple as an afternoon away from the kids. And not that the kids are the thing, but really just to have white noise, nothing in your head, and, go to a coffee shop by yourself, read a book for a few hours, whatever it is that fuels you. And for me, it's always a few things. One is being around other women. That always fuels me. So I'll leave this interview and I'll be even like more spry, more of a bounce to my step. And then just being able to sit and read. And, I had kind of gotten away from that with the book launch. It got so busy. And I was just chatting with my sister. She says, I said, what are you doing tonight? She's like, I'm going to sit down and read a good book. I'm like, gosh, it feels like it's been forever because I've been writing my own book and promoting it. I said, maybe that's the way. And so I've been reading some really lovely books. And when I've asked, the common thing I hear from moms is books. What are books anymore, right? They're not reading fiction. Okay. They're not reading fiction. They don't have time. So whatever that looks like for you, and within my own business, last year I hit the mark 2.5 times. I meant to do it 4 weeks out of the year. I call them my workcations. The first 3 or 4 days are doing nothing. It's really to sleep, to be out in nature, to meditate, to journal, read a good book, put my feet up. And the next day is to work on the business. And so maybe moms only need 3 or 4 days. And if you can't get 3 or 4 days, then build in an afternoon a week. If you can't afford a sitter, then trade services with a good friend. Watch her kids for a few hours and she can watch yours. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can have that childcare. And I know, one mom, a lot of the gyms even anymore have childcare built in where you can have the kids, if you're a member, have the kids taken care for a period of time, but whatever that looks like. So really think about what fuels you, build it in. Because if you don't build it in, someone else will build your schedule for you. And oftentimes it's the emergency at hand if it isn't just the day-to-day with the kids, right?
Absolutely. That's so true. And that's something I have watched a lot of my colleagues do, like you had mentioned, building in that time. I try to do it at least, like you said, once a quarter. But I definitely, within a month, I will sometimes just block out a day where I can just decompress. And during that day, I will take some time for myself and then sometimes take some time for the day-to-day stuff in the business and the little things that you often put off. And sometimes I'll even do that for the household because, most moms are the CEO of their households too. And so, paying the bills and doing all the little things, signing your kids up for camps, picking them up, taking them places, all of the things. So just making sure that you have time to fill your own cup and, just support yourself in the self-care and do what you need. And I love that you mentioned if you can't afford to have a babysitter, trade with a friend. There are so many ways to do this type of stuff. And something else that I tell moms is to look for local moms groups. They're all over the place now because I think we're all craving this connection. Like you said, I too am very energized by connecting with other women and especially moms because there's something unique about our group. It's very different. Life before kids is very different than life after kids. And so that's a great point. A very, very great point. So is there any last tips or thoughts you would like to leave the audience with?
Overall, or about just the connection and the D's?
Whatever you want.
Yeah, I would say, besides everything we've talked about I'd say, really, if you can afford nothing else, buy a book, listen to a summit, listen to these podcasts, take notes, start with the simple steps. It'll go a long way. For some people, it's not enough. Like, you do need the testing. And then, invest in yourself with whatever way and means that you can, because I have never, ever had a patient say, "Oh, I wasn't worth it." Like, I always heard, "This is the best investment I've made in myself." And you hear that whether you're a mom or a business owner, is like, when you invest in yourself, then you can go that much farther. You can be that better mom because you have that more energy. And you're not going to be that woman with her feet up at the pool, watching your kids scream, "Watch me, mama," like thinking, "Am I going to die? Am I not going to be here for my kids?" And I know that's kind of drastic, but since the last 4 years, I've seen people weigh and come in sicker and sicker. I have never seen anything like this in my career. I came to functional medicine, right, to solve unsolvable, but not at this level. And at one point we had someone call in and they wanted to bring their loved one in on a gurney in an ambulance. I'm like, no, there's just like, I don't know at this point, like that's already gone way too far. I mean, really way too far. And I know most of your listeners are going to be a different demographic, but it isn't. What I'll leave them with this is, you will feel fine until it feels like overnight you all of a sudden don't. And it's not because one thing happened. It's because of over time, you've had these subtle imbalances leading to inflammation. And then it is something that it's like a match that's lit and it sets it all off. And it's just so much easier. So if you don't have all the energy you need, start with some of these simple strategies we talked about. And the book actually has 2 more D's, and it's actually 3 D's, 3 S's, and 3 M's. But if I told you if it was a 9-step process, no one do 9 steps. Start with the first few things. And even my mentor, Dr. Neil Nathan, wrote the foreword. He's like, if you even did a couple of these things, it would improve your health drastically. And he's as seasoned as it gets. As you know, he's been in the field. What is he now? Probably at least 40 years. He's approaching 40 years.
Yeah. And he sees the sickest of the sick. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this amazing information. Moms, remember that there are things you can do to improve your energy, like everything we shared on the podcast today. All you have to do is take some action and take one simple step at a time. Last thing, I would love for you to share where people can find out more about you.
I refer them over to my website, www.drrajka.com. I'm sure that'll be linked in the notes. And
yes, it will be.
Pick up a copy of the book, Energized, Feel Fantastic Forever.
Absolutely, everybody. It is a great book. I bought it and I have read through, I have read half of it, but I've skimmed through the entire thing because it really is, it's very, very helpful. You lay everything out beautifully and simply. Sometimes when clinicians and doctors and researchers write books, they can make it a little bit over your head. This is very, very approachable and easy to read and doable. So I definitely encourage you to get the book. All right. Thank you so much, Rajka.
Thank you for having me.
If you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. Remember, knowledge is just the beginning. Taking action is what truly sparks change. If you're overwhelmed and don't have enough energy to make it through the day, I invite you to book a free 20-minute coaching call with me. It's a no-obligation chat where we can discuss your health goals and how I might be able to help you achieve them. Visit the link in the episode description to book that call. Until next time, keep striving for wellness and remember, you have the power to not just survive, but thrive in motherhood.